Welcome. You're watching The Big Question. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. It has been nearly 10 days since a peaceful vacation in Pahalgam turned into a bloodbath as Pakistani terrorists targeted 26 innocent Indian lives. In its aftermath, India's message to the perpetrators of the attack has been strong and decisive. What has followed is perhaps India's most expansive and multi-pronged punitive response, sending a clear message that blood cannot flow with water. In a historic first, India has suspended the Indus Water Treaty, a decades-old agreement that governs water sharing of the Indus rivers. As part of it, now India has halted the water flow via the Baglihar Dam on Chenab River in Jammu, a river to which Pakistan has rights to unrestricted flow as per the treaty. According to reports, the centre is planning similar steps on the Kishan Ganga Dam near Bandipur. India, being the upper riparian country, has a strategic advantage and can control the water that flows into Pakistan. Targeting the Indus River, the move puts pressure on the country's lifeline, considering 80% of Pakistan's water supply depends on Indus, and it forms the main source of water to agricultural provinces of Punjab and Sindh, which are the food belt of Pakistan. Beyond water, India has also struck at other parts of the Pakistan economy, which is already battling challenges. All import and transit of goods originating from or exported by Pakistan have been banned. The entry of Pakistani ships at Indian ports has also been prohibited. This move follows the suspension of direct trade and the closure of the Atari-Wagah trade corridor, yet another hit to the over 3,000 crore cross-border trade. India's trade with Pakistan has been on a decline since 2019, with official data showing a 56.91, nearly 57% drop in India's exports to Pakistan between April 2024 and February 2025. On the other hand, India's imports from Pakistan have also plummeted. Commerce Ministry data shows a significant drop in Indian imports from $2.86 million between April 2023 and Jan 2024 to just $420,000 during the same period in 2024-25. These figures, while modest in absolute terms, deliver a crushing blow to Pakistan's fragile economy and dwindling dollar reserves as it navigates tense IMF negotiations. India has also shut its airspace to Pakistani airlines. This increases fuel consumption, reduces operational efficiency, and may make routes commercially unviable. India has also launched a crackdown on Pakistani nationals across the country. As the Atari-Wagah border was sealed, all Pakistani citizens on short-term visas have been asked to leave. The government has also cancelled the SARC visa exemption scheme. Accounts of Pakistani celebs and YouTube channels being blocked are also surfacing. Diplomatically too, India has downgraded ties with Pakistan. At the international level, there are reports that advocating for Pakistan's re-entry onto the Financial Action Task Force grey list. If Pakistan is reinstated, the country would face increased scrutiny and financial limitations. With all of these measures, India has moved beyond condemnation to strategic coercion across all avenues of bilateral engagement. So why are we telling you all of this? Right now, 10 days on, there is a lot of speculation, questions about what is India doing, what is India doing. What we are highlighting is that what we are doing right now is what will have the greatest impact, a chokehold on the Pakistani economy. And that's the question we are putting in. Will India's actions put an economic choke on Pakistan, which is already mired in several challenges? To speak on this, I'm joined by Mitali Nikore, founder and chief economist at Nikore Associates, Kushwinder Vora, former chairman, Central Water Commission, Nitin A. Gokhale, founder and CEO of Bharat Shakti Group, and of course, Rajiv Dogra, former Consul General of Karachi for India. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. Mr. Gokhale, let me start with your comments and the picture that is getting painted right now, and why these kind of steps on the Indus Water Treaty, which will impact agriculture, the no-fly zones, the stopping of all communication and postages and trade routes, becomes an important weapon in times like this.
Well, there is always the kinetic action that is expected by people, but these measures that you just mentioned are long-term and much more impactful when it comes to affecting Pakistan's status or state of Pakistan in terms of economy, in terms of its people's confidence in the Pakistani government. Because once people in, say, Sindh or Punjab start getting affected, and whatever minimal trade that was there with India, either via third country or directly, when that is being stopped, also visas being stopped, the airlines, like you mentioned, will bleed. All this starts affecting the population of Pakistan, and that will certainly put pressure on the military. Not that the military cares about what people think, but it's a long-term game that India is playing here, unlike what they did during Uri 2016 and Pulwama, post-Pulwama, Balakot in 2019. And I suspect that by keeping its options open for a hard military strike somewhere, it is also keeping the Pakistani military on perpetual alert, which is not something that any military likes to do because it sort of means more expenditure, more deployment of forces, and you can't be alert consistently for, say, more than a 15-day period or a 20-day period. And if this is the strategy, I think it's a well thought out strategy. We'll see how it goes beyond this, but I think this is a smart strategy India has adopted, and I think it will bear fruit in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, at times like this, and especially when such a heinous crime has taken place, there is a lot of call for the light and fire show, so to speak. But this becomes equally important, and that's a perspective we want to bring, if not more important. Mithali Nikore, as an economist, just give us some context of the state of the Pakistan economy and the levers that India holds to put a choke on that aspect.
Absolutely, Ramana. And first of all, thanks a lot for having me on your show and in this discussion. I was looking at the data a few weeks ago, and I was struck by a very important statistic. In the 1960s, actually, when you looked at the per capita income of Pakistan and the per capita income of India, they were actually hovering at about the same point of around $400. Today, when you look at the per capita incomes of the two countries, Pakistan stands at around $1,200 or $1,300, and India's crossed $2,500. So that just shows you the growth trajectory of the economies of the two countries and how different it's been. Because in the last 4 or 5 decades, India has gone ahead, invested in technology, India has invested in broad-based growth, India has invested in infrastructure-led development, India has invested in inclusive development. Pakistan, on the other hand, has had a series of economic and political choices that have been made by the economic leadership, which has created a situation that they've had to take nearly 25 bailouts from the International Monetary Fund. They have had high unemployment rates and continue to have almost an 8% unemployment rate, with a youth population exceeding 60% of the total workforce. And they have high income inequality, with the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer and poorer by the day. So, in such an economy, when you have high debt levels, when you have low foreign exchange reserves, it becomes very difficult to kickstart and, have a war effort in that economy.
Yeah, so the question then is, what is the end goal here and how do we put it forward? Mr. Vora, Khushvinder Vora, I want your aspect and your perspective here. When the news first hit that the Indus Water Treaty was being cancelled, which has been on since 1960, some commentary coming in that what extent of impact will this have? How soon can India do it? You'll have to build dams and you'll end up flooding your own cities, etc. But now that you're seeing the levers that are being used, can you explain to us how this would be put through and how this will follow through?
Yeah, Tamanna. Basically, what has been done as on today is we have paused the treaty, right? Paused or suspended.
Yeah.
So this is a stage where now, once it is suspended, it means that we are no more under obligation to follow the treaty stipulations. And if we talk about very short term impact of that, say that now we are not obligated to share our flow data and also the flood data, which is very vital for management of water resources for any country. So if that flow data and flood information, which was coming to them somewhat in time frame, is not available, so their water management will definitely be affected. Their flood management measures will definitely be affected. But then basically then they will not have any forum like Permanent Indus Commission to discuss these issues, and they will not be able to tour our territories. So all this basically is going to affect them in a very short term. Plus there are a number of measures which we can take during the short term, like storages will definitely take some time. But in the short term, there are a number of things which we can do will affect, Pakistan. Now, if as has been rightly pointed out by you, that 80% of irrigation is from Indus system in Pakistan, and their 20% of GDP is basically based on irrigation. Now, to affect the irrigation, it is not necessary that we should entirely, cut off the entire water for that matter. But once we are doing irrigation, we are growing the crops, we do watering for number of days, right? So number of waterings in many 10 dailies kind of situation. And if even if it is the water supply is affected in any one 10 daily of particular crop water when the crop was vitally requiring the water, that completely destroys the quality as well as quantity of the irrigation. So to make an effect on them, it is not necessary that all the water has to be stopped and only then some effect will be there.
Okay.
So, but if even if I say in 10% of that is depleted during certain time frames when it is required, it will have the equally disastrous effect on that. So this is how in the short term also we can really do a lot of.
So, Mr. Dogra, just try and put this in perspective, because this is not the first confrontation, hostility between India and Pakistan, and India has retaliated in various ways in the past depending on the situation. Is this different? Is this an action set which has more long-lasting impact? How are you seeing it?
Well, you're right to say that there have been 4 occasions in the past when Pakistan has been the aggressor. Only once in 1971, we achieved the objectives which we had set out with and which should have been done even earlier, but were done meticulously in a well-planned fashion, and the results are there for everyone to see, especially the Pakistanis. As far as the present situation is concerned, I think we have to look at 2 issues. One is the issue of terrorism. The other is the Indus Waters Treaty. Now, you have analyzed the situation well, but let me give you a little background, because one of my books, Where Borders Bleed, has a full chapter on Indus Waters Treaty. And when I was researching for that chapter, I was shocked to see, and I think it was for the first time that anyone had written about it, that India was forced to sign this treaty literally at gunpoint. And I will quote a telegram of American ambassador in Pakistan who sent it to Washington, where he said, both Pakistan and India are in big financial trouble. This is the time to teach Pandit Nehru rules of international behavior. And the Indus Water Treaty in 1960 followed soon thereafter. There is no treaty in the world, there's no treaty in the history of the world which is as generous as Indus Waters Treaty. There is no international law that regulates treaties, trans-river treaties. So there was no obligation for India to sign this treaty. What made it worse was our representative, I think his name was Niranjan Gulati, who was the waters expert from India's side when treaty was being sort of negotiated at gunpoint.
Yeah.
He did not even make provision for glaciers receding, which provide waters to rivers, and they are providing lesser and lesser water each year. He did not make any provision for population increase on the Indian side. He did not make any provision for agricultural requirements of Indian side. I think one of your lady panelists was remarking about 60s being the time when Indian and Pakistani GDPs were roughly the same. If she goes back to 50s, she'll find that Pakistani GDP was one of the highest in Asia, including more than India, because West Punjab, the Punjab which is now with Pakistan, was the agricultural bowl of united India. The eastern Punjab, the Punjab which we have now, was virtually a fallow desert land. So it was the labor of Indian refugees who came in, who turned it into an agricultural paradise with the limited resources. In fact, Indonesia sent a business delegation in 50s to Pakistan to see how prosperous it is and whether they can emulate that. So our generosity, both in terms of giving up our lands to Pakistan and our generosity thereafter in terms of Indus Water Treaty, we did not end with just giving 80% waters to Pakistan. In fact, we gave more than that. We also paid Pakistan, if I remember correctly, under pressure from America again through World Bank, 65 million pounds to build irrigation networks here, which are in today's terms 2 billion pounds. But the story doesn't end there. If you open any television channel today or any media, they are talking in terms of the effect the stoppage or reduction would have in Pakistan. What about India? Have you seen the issues between Punjab and Haryana? Have you seen the Yamuna River which flows in Delhi? Do we deserve to be starved of water because we must be generous to Pakistan? There's no law in the world which says we cannot suspend.
No, of course, well put. Well put that this was a long time coming. Now, the question really is, and I need to take a very short break, but we'll pick up this conversation after this very short break. The question is, what is the end game here? So there is a choke on the agricultural economy, which is a sizable part of the GDP for Pakistan from the Indus Water Treaty. There's a choke on trade. Even when we stop our aircrafts flying over Pakistan, they lose a fee. But what is the end game over here? Today we're talking about the impact of India's action on Pakistan's economy and the choke that will take place. Mithali Nikore is with us. I'm speaking with Kushvinder Vora. I'm speaking with Nitin Gokhale and Rajiv Dogra. So, we've been talking about the various aspects of what has been happening. My question now is then, what is the end game here? And Nitin Gokhale, let me come to you on that. Will it be sufficient to have this kind of an economic impact, and can that get mitigated with support from China, support from the IMF, or support to Pakistan from America, which seems to be sitting on the fence?
Well, that has been also one of the challenges for Indian diplomacy, that the world, or at least the Western world, particularly US and UK, have always been supportive of Pakistan for their own reasons. And now China is their greatest and biggest benefactor. So we have to take into consideration that, as the Indian decision makers will have to do that. But when you do this chokehold, like you have described, and then the people start questioning, as it is the Pakistani army, which considers itself the custodian of Pakistan's destiny, then right now has its prestige and its status at its lowest, perhaps, in its history. And people are mocking it, which was very rarely seen earlier. People are also questioning their ability to counter and combat insurgencies internally in Balochistan, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and also combating the Taliban surge on its western border. So if that is happening, then the Pakistani army comes under tremendous pressure. I think the end game is to weaken Pakistani army, to teach Pakistani army the lesson, because ultimately this Pahalgam attack was not just a terrorist attack, but it was a Pakistani army's plan. It wanted to trap India into an immediate reaction, immediate retaliatory action, which will harm India more, because India has much more to lose than Pakistan does. So I think this is a long-term game, like I said in the beginning, that India is playing, which slowly sort of strangles Pakistan's economy, strangles Pakistan's options for military retaliation or military action. And of course, simultaneously, then India needs to get its act right, tighten its security measures, its intelligence apparatus. All that will keep on happening. But that's a long-term game, I would think, and which is the right game, despite all the calls, the hot-headed calls that have been there for immediate revenge. The revenge will come. And like I've said somewhere else, I think what has been ascribed to 2-3 different people, revenge is the dish best served cold. And I think this is in the last 20, 30 years, this is the first time India is thinking in those terms, like it was done in 1971. India took its time to get into East Pakistan, break up Pakistan into two. It planned and then executed the plan very well. It took almost 9 months from March 1971 to December 1971 to get into the act as far as the military action is concerned. I
Right.
think that's the template that is being followed.
So in that template, then Mr. Dogra, is there scope for something more visual and immediate? Where does it go from here? Because you also want a cessation of pushing these terrorist organizations into India. You also have to display that there has been a response. So is this going to be sufficient from the optical point of view?
Well, quite clearly, if the objective, and it is, the objective is that terror must stop in India, then we have to make sure that all the constituencies in Pakistan feel the pinch, and some constituencies in Pakistan raise their voice. By some constituencies, I mean their public, their media, and their opinion makers. Unless they put pressure on the army, it will not mend its ways. In fact, the larger point that needs to be considered here is we are talking of our short-term and long-term plans. It will be equally good if we were to think in terms of what short-term and long-term plans Pakistan has. Because for the last 75 plus years, Pakistan has had only one plan, and that is to wrest Kashmir from India and to bleed India thereafter by 1,000 cuts. So it's not going to be easy. It's also very important for someone to calculate the cost we've already paid. I'll just give you one small example. Since 1993 Bombay terror attack, you have seen the entire security complexion change in India. Every theater, every industry, every airport, almost every establishment must be protected by security guards.
Yeah.
One estimate that I had read mentioned something like 9 million security guards or 11 million security guards at the cost of $11 billion every year. That is how much it is costing India. And yet, we are worried about the cost for Pakistan. As far as I'm concerned,
we're not worried about the cost of. Let me just clarify here. We're not worried about the cost of Pakistan. We are today in this conversation assessing the success of this strategy and understanding this strategy, making it very clear that this is the long-term strategy. If you have to have a solution which is long-term and permanent, then at the end of the day, it comes down to economics.
Well, that's a very nebulous concept.
Is it?
What is the long-term strategy and what will be the implications of
Okay,
long-term
let me just get more
strategy?
views in on that point. Mitali Nikore wants to come in. Yes.
At the end of the day, this is only scratching the surface. There are a number of measures that India can take going forward to look at how we can, chokehold the Pakistan economy in that sense. One of the major ways is to think about how can India influence foreign direct investment and foreign investment that goes into Pakistan, barring China and some of the other nations. When we look at the multilateral systems and we look at World Bank, ADB, the Asian Development Bank, we look at the IMF itself, currently Pakistan is in the middle of a long-term bailout package of nearly $4.3 billion to keep their economy stable, and that's a 7-year-long package. So how can India use its diplomacy to really influence, this decision-making at the international level of whether to support Pakistan's economic stability or not is a very critical question. And
That's an important point, especially about the multilateral agencies. I'm almost running out of time, but I want a quick word from Nitin Gokhale on this. IMF, for example, how do you stop the tap of handouts and doles?
Well, you lobby with you sort of be there inside the tent in IMF, although the timing right now is unfortunate that India's representative has been recalled. But I'm sure India has other plans up its sleeve. where India will oppose any bailout by the IMF of Pakistan. And it's been done or will be done going forward. This pressure has to be kept up on multiple fronts. This multi-pronged strategy is what ultimately work, because punitive action has its effect only for a while, and the Pakistanis will again come back to their old self, which is what we have to keep in mind, that they are incorrigible. Their only reason that the Pakistani army has its standing is because they keep telling people that we are going to get Kashmir back for you. That reason has to be removed if you have to punish the Pakistani military, really. But yes, IMF is one of the steps.
Okay, so it has to be a multi-pronged response, and this is clearly one part of it. We don't know the full picture, but this is definitely a set of developments that is worth looking at very, very closely. We'll have to wrap it here. Thank you to all of you for joining us on the show today, and to our viewers as well. Thank you for tuning in.